Hi, everybody. My name's Hillel. This is Overthinking Comics, and I'm here with Brian Stenick. Brian,
Hey,
say hello to everyone.
hey, nice to see
so,
everybody again. Nice to see you. Hello.
thank you. You as well. I've been looking forward to our chat because you and I have a really exciting discussion tonight. I've ever since you suggested it earlier in the week, I've been looking forward to it. We're going to be talking about the death of Superman, and if we get time, we're going to go to Knightfall. These were two huge comic events that especially for us. I was in high school when both of these came out, and it was an energizing experience, the whole thing. Even though I never bought into the idea that they were going to kill off Superman, but it was pretty exciting. And the follow up series, The Reign of the Superman, that made me go, well, maybe they are killing off Superman, right? And so
Yeah.
you go, oh, I don't know, what are they going to do here? So it was one of those. It was one of those series that was really interesting. It introduced some really fascinating characters, and we're going to get into it. What would you like to wow us with, or have us think about before we get into this?
I mean, just approaching this topic. I mean, I was somewhat of a comic book pedestrian, if you will, until the reign, until the death of Superman. I guess it just completely grasped my consciousness that they were going to kill off Superman. I was overwhelmed by the whole concept, so it really drew me in, and I was on the edge of my seat. Um, yeah, fantastic.
Well, I think this was about the time when Image started. I think Image had been out for about a year at this point. They came out 92, wasn't it? 92, 93, or something like that.
That sounds right.
And
Early '90s. Yeah.
yeah. And so I think if I remember correctly, I had almost exclusively switched from DC and Marvel over to Image because that's where my favorite artists were. And I think it was the death of Superman that brought me back into the big two for a little bit,
Yeah.
where I started paying attention to those again. And the 90s were a really weird time for comics. They had some really strange
Mhm.
costume concepts. Like, it just didn't. A lot of it didn't make sense. There was one character that they introduced and was in the Death of Superman with the Justice League. It was Bloodwind, who I thought was a really interesting character. And we find out later on he's actually the Martian Manhunter, who for some reason decided to take on a new identity. I don't know why. I thought he was a cool character. And at any rate, so he's in this. So why don't you set up for us and tell us, give us a synopsis of the death of Superman, just so everybody knows. This is here's your spoiler warning. Of course, you've had almost 30 years to read this story. There have been
Right.
animated, they've got an animated version of this that came out in 2017, 2018. So you've had the opportunity to know what's going on with both these, and you don't know, then this is your warning. That's all I can say.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I got into it just as it was either wrapping up or because I had a good friend who collected comics who was like, "You got to see this. You got to see this. They're gonna kill Superman." And so anyway, I believe it was the Man of Steel. Was it 16 or 18? Yeah, Man of Steel 18. I think is where it kind of begins Doomsday's. So he is some backstory for Doomsday. He was created what it seems like millions of years ago on another planet as the ultimate death machine. There was a small race of aliens who were being attacked on all sides consistently on their home planet. So they used their technology, which was pretty interesting at the time, and they created this death machine. And so all the prototypes of Doomsday, they were cloning over and over and over, and they would send it out, it would die. They would send it out, it would die, and every time it would regenerate. Or not yet. It would die, and they would clone it again, die, clone it again, and they used the material, his biological material, to clone. So they kept recreating the same entity over and over and over and over. This entity being Doomsday. So after a span of time, Finally, the last form of Doomsday didn't die. He destroyed everything. But in this, he created the ability to regenerate himself. And anything that had killed him or approached him, he could now overcome. So the backdrop of Doomsday is he is this ultimate killing machine who, when killed or when faces an adversary, comes back even better. And so Doomsday jumps from planet to planet to planet through various means, killing planet after planet after planet. That's kind of the backdrop. And finally, he was beaten and encased in some form of in a suit with bindings and in some sort of a container on Earth. So eventually, Doomsday escapes, and Doomsday, there's this beautiful, not beautiful, but iconic picture of Doomsday escaping his encasement, and he sees a bird, and it lands in his hand, and he crushes the bird, and you realize that this being has no heart.
No heart, right? Well, I seem to remember that Doomsday was created by Kryptonians originally. Now it could be that I'm misremembering this. It has been almost 30 years, but I was pretty sure that the Kryptonians were the ones who created him for some reason, and then he got sent off from Krypton. It could be an Elseworlds thing, but I'm pretty sure that was part of his origin. He is an interesting person because he's effectively he is effectively unbeatable in the long run. You might be able to beat him now, but eventually you won't be able to beat him, and that causes all sorts of problems. And I think they've had to take some extreme measures to actually exile him after he resurrected as well. I think at one point they put him to like at the beginning of time or something like that, somewhere crazy.
So I have some interfering noise here. I got to handle this. 2 seconds.
Oh, sure, no problem. So anyway, Doomsday as a character was interesting. I think that just skipping a little bit ahead on this, if I have one problem with him, it was that I think that he was a character that was so powerful, it actually made more sense for him to die than to bring him back. I think it would have been better if he'd just been this nightmare that everyone had, and he had died permanently from it. Because the problem is that giving him the ability to resurrect himself after something kills him means that, assuming that ability has no limit, then he would eventually be unkillable. And then that would mean that, being the death machine that he is, he'd eventually wipe out as much of life in the universe as possible. So I always feel like he's one of those bad guys or good guys. There's some good guys like this as well who are just so overpowered that it would be better just to introduce them and let them go on their way permanently at some point. Your sound taken care of?
Certainly interesting. Get back. Well, I guess anyways, yeah. So Doomsday escapes, goes on the rampage. First, he encounters the Justice League of America, JLA, who battle him rather unsuccessfully. I guess
this wasn't their strongest lineup. You had Booster Gold, you had Fire and Ice.
Yep.
You had Guy Gardner with his yellow ring, which
Guy Gardner.
He had it was Sinestro's ring. I don't remember where he got the yellow ring at.
Yeah, I believe it was.
And then you had Bloodwind. I mean, that's not their most, Bloodwind, aka Martian Manhunter, is on par with Superman. But
right.
Unless you have a match or something, then he's out. But but it's not their most powerful lineup. But they get taken out pretty quick.
Right. I guess of note was Blue Beetle.
Yes.
He was either
Yep.
beaten beyond repair or near death.
Near death. Yeah.
Super interesting. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it was basically a build up. About 7 comics. Like I said, Man of Steel 18, Justice League number 69. We've got Superman 74, Adventures of Superman 497, Action Comics 684, Man of Steel 19, and then finally it was Superman 75, which is the iconic one with the flag.
Right.
Superman's cape is a flag there.
Right.
So yeah, after the JLA are rather unsuccessful. While that's going on, Superman's having this interview, telling him the world of his exploits and kind of I think it was Miss Grant was the name of the interviewer. He was the interviewee. Just kind of explaining just generalized things. I don't remember anything of note in the interview, except they asked him like what he was fearful of. So that kind of sets the tone. There's something ominous is occurring. And then he pretty much goes into this joins the JLA, the last remnants, and they begin this epic like battle for at least I think it's 3-4 comics of Superman kind of one-on-one
punching, right?
Punching,
kicking, throwing, everything. Yeah.
I mean, they pretty much wrecked the town, man.
Yeah, Metropolis. Well, they wrecked where everybody started from, and then they got into Metropolis eventually, and started wrecking that place as well. It is interesting that they chose to go this route with Superman. I almost wish that the death stuck. I know that they never intended for it to stick. I wish it had, though.
Right.
One of my great regrets in comics is that death doesn't mean anything. People can just shake it off and they're fine.
Right.
And it completely ruins any of the consequences of losing a battle. Generally, this is where I think like Japanese manga and their animes are better than American comics, is that they will have, unless it's Dragon Ball, otherwise they pretty much have resolutions. Dragon Ball, they just wish everybody, they're going through, I think apparently they're resurrecting Goku's entire family and probably all the Saiyans at some point.
Sure.
But why not? But no, this is the negative is that it took something away from the new heroes that they introduced, from Steel and Superboy. They eventually had to come with an idea that Superboy couldn't age. He would always be stuck in the body of a 16-year-old kid,
right,
for his entire life, and he would always therefore be Superboy and never a Superman. And that kind of sucks. I mean, I would really like to. I'd much rather see the mantle passed on. Superman could pass the mantle on, but they didn't do that, and we get to Knightfall. That problem will appear again there. Absolutely. So, but regardless of that, at the time when we were collecting this, we really didn't know how to act. I was doubtful. I think I was telling you this before we got on. I was doubtful at first. I was like, I don't really think that they're going to kill Superman off once and for all. But then they came out with this Reign of the Superman, and they introduced those 4 people: the Eradicated Superman, Cyborg Superman, Steel, and Superboy. I thought, maybe they are. Maybe this is a new chapter. Maybe they're making. Maybe one of these guys is going to be Superman's replacement, and it wasn't. But it created like 4 interesting characters.
Absolutely.
At the very least, yeah.
I did see an interview or kind of a documentary type issue with Denny O'Neil, who was one of the writers for DC at the time. He did mention that it was if it was up to him, he would have kept Superman dead for at least a year. He wanted to keep him dead for a long time, really cement that and grow these other characters some more. The Reign of the Superman was fun for me. I wasn't so invested in Superman at that time.
Yeah.
So I was just like, this is fantastic. There was like the Eradicator, I thought was a fantastic, really interesting concept, being Kryptonian DNA, Kryptonian weapon. So he had some of the memories of Superman. He was very Superman-esque in that way. Kind kind of carrying over some of the mythos of Krypton, which is always an interesting tale.
Sure.
I think John Henry Irons, the Steel, taking over the Man of Steel title was fun. I think for an African-American hero, I think he was a strong hero. He was interesting. Giving him the Man of Steel title just seems
Well,
fluid.
and he had a very strong moral character too. Like
Yeah.
that was, and he had a very strong moral character and a never say die attitude, where he was a man of steel. I mean, his personality was a man of steel. That's what made him so strong.
Yeah, Hank Henshaw, I think, was the most interesting, and he took over the main Superman title as the cyborg Superman. Mm-hmm. People were very unsure what they were getting with that, and that was a very wild escapade. But yeah, killing killing Superman was just, it was unbelievable. It was astonishing. It sold, to this day, I think it's some of the biggest comic book sales ever. In fact, I own Superman 75, and occasionally I look up the price, and because they printed so many of these issues, it just doesn't have the price value that a lot of people would anticipate. If you have a pristine, unopened copy with the black bag with the blood on the front, it may be around $200 or something like that, which isn't bad for a few pages, but considering how epic this was and how important it was, and being nearly 30 years old, it doesn't have the price value you'd think. But the story certainly, we got our money's worth. I mean, it was only like $1.75 or $1.25 at the time, and just fun.
And you were riveted, and you couldn't wait to find out what happened next in the story. And it was interesting because at that point, Lois Lane knew his identity, and they were in a romantic relationship. I think after he was resurrected, they got married. I think it was after he came back.
Right.
But they finally, they kind of moved on with certain elements. And I find the older that these companies have gotten, the more they've been forced to, at some point, acknowledge the growth of their universe, especially with characters who develop families around them, like the Superman family and the Bat family, where you've got new characters coming in, and at some point they've got to admit that Batman's older than 30 or 40 years old, because otherwise he's going through Robin's way too fast. And every year, this is my new Robin. What happened to the last one?
Absolutely.
But anyway, but the whole Superman with the reign of the Superman, they really could have taken that further. And I love the design of Superboy. Pretty a little tired for some reason. But he was great, because he was the previous iterations of Superboy had been a smaller, slimmer Superman. And he looked exactly the same. He pretty much behaved the same. There was no real difference between the two of them. But this Superboy was clearly a teenager, was a different person altogether, had a different personality. He was really into girls. I think that was the big thing. And which is more like a regular teenage boy. And, it took him a long time to understand. Excuse me. I think that this is, with anything when we talk about superpowers and having abilities, I think that they had started creating in the 90s characters who had powers and used them purely for selfish reasons. More of those kind of characters were coming around. And it was nice to see that Superboy, although he had certain selfish motivations because he was a kid, but he did struggle with trying to do the right thing, and he did grow over time until he became part of Young Justice and the Teen Titans and all that. But it still became part of the Justice League. But I did want to go back to Hank Henshaw. I had remembered seeing him when he had a story arc. He was a U.S. astronaut, went to space. Something happened to him, and he was suddenly able to take over technology.
Yep.
And I think he blamed Superman or something like that. And I think he ended up going into outer space at some point. That was the last we saw of him until the cyborg Superman came in. And so he was
Mhm.
interesting. Some ways a tragic figure, but a tragic figure that either was driven crazy by what happened to him, or was always secretly had a demon in him that was released by the accident. It's not clear which one it was. I almost want to say he's too evil to be just crazy. Like
Right.
I don't think you can be that evil. I think real evil is someone doing something knowingly, and I don't think someone being crazy is evil. But someone who does something knowingly for
Right.
selfish reason or for whatever reason, I think that's evil.
It seems to be the kind of the premise for a lot of villains becomes some major life event, whether it be running into one of the heroes or some whatever the event is, and it becomes the catalyst for this like almost Jungian fate to emerge from their subconscious and kind of
Right.
take over, and it becomes this driving force, an obsession, if you will, And so the villains, I always liked misunderstood villains. Um, I never really got into. I mean, like the Joker's interesting, but for instance, kind of jumping over to say Batman, but he was always a little bit disheveled to me. He was always just strange. You could tell he wanted to inflict chaos and pain, and that was hard to associate with. Versus, a more misunderstood villain, um, like going back to Green Lantern, like Sinestro for me was always he kind of slowly shifted for what he was the greatest Green Lantern of his generation and or
Right.
age, and then he got more and more control. He wanted more and more order, and slowly, he kind of drifted into this misunderstanding where finally he had to be confronted by the Guardians. But
Right.
going back to Superman, yeah, or Superboy, that is. Yeah, he had the leather jacket. He had like
Yeah.
piercings. He was like the MTV generation Superman.
Right.
Um, yeah,
It was
for
very appropriate. Right.
right,
And his
and they kept him
in
around
the
for a long time.
they did, and they finally killed him off in Teen Titans. But he was paired off with Tim Drake, who's my
Mm,
favorite Robin. And maybe that's because he came about when I was a kid. He became Robin when I was a kid, like I don't know,
right.
'89 or something like that. And you got to actually watch his progression as he went on his training journey. The initial Robin series was about his journey of martial arts and development. And
Yeah.
his first big bad guy was, I think his name was Cobra, King Cobra or Cobra. And he was a blind martial artist, but he was also a mobster or something like that. And it was great. It was great seeing that sort of development. So with Superboy, you have also a development, a character arc, and it was great when they pair those two together. It was really really interesting. Um, so let's move on because we keep going. We keep jumping over to Nightfall. Let's introduce what Nightfall was all about.
Okay. So on the precipice of this whole Superman thing, they
Yeah,
I guess one of the good things was big events in comics sells comics. That's something
sure.
the industry learned through the death of Superman. So they decided,
Oh,
oh, there must
Crisis
be
too.
events now.
Yeah,
There's going to be, and I think we're still living in that wake of constant
sure.
big events to sell, comics.
So
So they decided,
blockbuster comic events. Yeah.
right, when it worked so well for Superman, well, because so if you look at the timeline, we've got what it was 92, I believe. Um,
93, I think.
yeah, the end of Superman was the 92 into 93, and then by like 93, 94, we get Nightfall. This
Mhm.
Batman where Batman is broken, So what Nightfall? Yes, 93. The first volume of this is called what Broken Bat. So Batman. So there's this character Bane who comes on the scene. He releases all of the villains from Arkham Asylum, and Batman has to face one by one each one of these again and recapture them. Supposedly, this is supposed to, physically wear him out, mentally wear him out, emotionally challenge him, and somewhat break him. That way, he's more approachable for Bane to destroy, because that's ultimately Bane's plan, is to destroy the
Well,
Bat
and I do want to
and
point
take
out
over
one thing here
Gotham.
before you move on, and that is that Bane is an extremely intelligent villain. Although people a lot of time focus on him and his the venom and all that, and he's really strong. In actuality, it was his mind that he was a
Mhm.
great strategist, and he created a strategy against Batman. The using his physical strength was a secondary.
Mhm.
It was just like a lot of Batman villains. It was a battle of the minds and the wits,
Right.
not just of punches.
Well, the interesting thing is, a couple issues before this, Batman, what was her name? Shalanda, something like that. Batman was seeing this doctor, Bruce, and he was saying how wore out he was. And so they were kind of laying the
Mm,
groundwork for this. So all these villains escape. And I think it was fun for the writers, because they got to reintroduce or Amygdala, that the giant brute that he fought with the ventriloquist. They got to bring back Firefly, a more obscure
mm.
villain. So they were able to really dig deep in the mythos of Batman and bring out a lot of different villains. And of course, you have your Riddler, your Scarecrow, and your Joker, and your more Mr. Freeze, some of these more famous ones. But so I think the shift is when Bane discovers that Bruce Wayne is Batman. Um, I don't remember exactly how he figures it out. I think he sees him, that is Wayne, and puts two and two together. So Joker and Scarecrow kind of team up, create mass chaos. Scarecrow does his fear gas. Batman must relive in his mind the death of Jason Todd, a death in the family, one of the most, famous, iconic Batman issues where the Joker kills Robin. So Batman is forced with this huge traumatic event. He feels like he let Jason Todd down and has to relive this as a as a mental problem, as a challenge. And so all of
Yeah,
these things begin to build. Batman even mentions how wore out he is. You kind of see these themes laced in the run up to, around Batman 90, I think it is, and then Detective Comics. I think it's like 660, right around this time. Either way, Batman's henchmen are sent. No, Bane's henchmen are sent against Batman, um, and that is the first 10 chapters of Knightfall. The huge issue is Batman 497. This is chapter 11, Knightfall, the one you have behind your head there, Hillel. This is huge. I remember buying it on the newsstands. I remember holding it in my hand, going, "This is what it's all led to." Just I had such feelings and attachments. Um, so chapter 11, Knightfall. Um, it begins with Bruce Wayne coming home completely tired, and you see like the narration um, of Batman explaining how tired he is, how wore out he is, how he doesn't know if he can continue, and their Bane is in Batman's house, his home, which is kind of representative of his humanity. It's Wayne Manor. It's
yeah,
the place where he's more safe. And Alfred has been struck unconscious, and their Bane is awaiting Batman. And they had this whole exchange about his identity. How'd you figure it out? And Bane was like, it was nothing to figure it out. So then ensues like 19, 20 pages of just Bane thrashing Batman. From Wayne Manor, trickles down into the Batcave, which I think the one scene that the giant penny falls upon him. I mean,
yeah,
Batman is just being thrashed about, even knocked into the case of Robin, the previous Robin, Jason Todd. Um, so he's just basically broken. And then toward the end of that, Bane um, lifts Batman up, and same as in the movie, cracks his back using his knee
yeah.
and leaves him there near paralyzed, if not paralyzed. The follow-up of that is the next issue in Detective Comics. I got it here somewhere. Maybe right around.
Now, why do you remember if they explained why he broke his back and didn't kill him?
I think the idea was that killing him would give him some kind of release. Killing him would be a stop to the torture. Where Bane really wanted to torture him, he wanted him alive to see him take over Gotham.
And why does he hate Batman so much, or is it just more of a, I'm your, I'm a conqueror. I'm a conqueror. I'm here to take over your place, and I just get some sort of pleasure out of watching the former king, watch as I take over his kingdom.
Yeah, I think the backstory to Bane at this point was he was imprisoned and had to fight ferociously and very hard to stay alive in prison, and eventually, got out, whatever. And yeah, I think it was about control. Like he really wanted to overtake Gotham, and the only thing standing in his way was the Batman. So of course, Batman had to be dealt with. So yeah, I was just gonna say real quick, the follow up to Batman 497 was in Detective Comics, where the first scene is Bane holding Batman above his head and tossing him in a street like a piece of garbage, and says, here's your hero, and then that's the defeat of Batman. Like I said, it's one of these things like it was fun to read. It was exciting to read, comparing and contrasting. So Doomsday kind of conquers all Superman's friends, eventually leading in the clash between those two, whereas you almost have the reverse, and Batman having to face all of his old villains again. For me, it was climactic at the end, but the run up wasn't as climatic for me. It wasn't much of a crescendo, because I feel like Batman was nightly catching these same villains anyway. I don't know why in this particular order it would break him, send him over the edge, wear his whole persona down, when this is precisely what he's been doing for years anyway.
Well, maybe just the exhaustion of having to do so many at the same time.
Yeah, naturally, that makes sense.
Versus a villain of the week sort of situation. I want to say this. Whereas I enjoyed the new lineup of heroes that we got as a result of the death of Superman, I didn't so much enjoy them putting Azrael as Batman. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Also, I thought his costume was hideous. I really hated his Batman costume. It was ridiculous looking. And but more than that, why not Nightwing? It makes more sense for Nightwing to be the replacement. And,
thank you. That's what I was
you're welcome. Nightwing confronts him about this, but I don't think he ever answers it to. I don't remember what his response is, but it wasn't satisfying. I remember that. I thought it was really weak. I think they wanted to shake things up a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Because what I remember from Azrael was he was crazy.
Yeah.
So why would you take a crazy person? And Rick agrees. Hi, Rick. Why would you take a crazy person and say, yes, I trust you with my city? This doesn't make any sense. It was like, it's obvious they had already planned out what they were going to do afterwards, and they wanted, for some crazy reason, they thought, well, doing Nightwing would be too predictable. We'll just bring in this crazy guy. We'll make him Batman, and we'll see what happens. And then he'll go crazy, which is a surprise for everybody. No one's going to expect that one. And then Batman will be forced out of retirement to deal with him. And it was a dumb move. Like I feel like there's more logic and there was more of an interesting storyline of how to react to Superman dying than Batman being out of the picture. Batman, was calling shots. Truthfully, if Nightwing wanted to, he could have just put on his own bat costume and gone out there and done everything he wanted to. But anyway, so for me, the Knightfall, Batman breaking first, he broke his back. He wasn't killed, so it's not as impactful. You still have Batman still able to call the shots to some extent. he's still able to train people. He just, has a back brace, or maybe he's in a wheelchair. But yeah, Rick says that Azrael wasn't crazy when he accepted the position. No, but this was not the first time he fought Azrael, and Azrael had been driven crazy by the weird Saint Dumas order he was part of. Batman pulled him out of that, and I guess restored his sanity. But this is a man who's literally been insane. Why would you?
Right.
Why would you put him in? I mean, this is already a stressful job, being a superhero vigilante who goes around beating people up at night. Why in the world would you take that person, put them in a situation, and say, "I trust you completely. Good luck."
Right.
Whereas with Nightwing, Nightwing has been there. He groomed him personally. He trained him. He knew Nightwing had a very solid moral core. He not only was he effective against street thugs, he was effective dealing with superpowered individuals with his history with the Teen Titans. He would have fit in well with the Justice League. It wouldn't have been much of a transition for him. Nightwing had all he was in. If they'd done that, pass it on to maybe. I'll put this out there. Maybe that the writers at DC felt if they passed it on to Nightwing, it might be a more of a permanent fit, because it does make so much sense for Nightwing to take over.
Yeah, there'd be much more symmetry in selecting a Nightwing. Of course, we're talking about Jean-Paul Vallée, the one who took over the mantle of the Bat, Azrael. So he had some brainwashing. They called it throughout the comic series. They call it the system. It was an system implanted in his brain that he'd become, even though he didn't know martial arts, that he would become or overcome any obstacle through adaptation and through education. And so if you remember, first came the gauntlets, the gloves, the razor sharp shot projectiles that had razors. So he first took the original Batman suit, Jean-Paul did, and then created the gauntlets at first. And then after, I think, losing to Bane, even though Bruce had told him not to accost Bane, he did. And he believed he lost. And then he began to build the suit, which you thought was hideous. There was a huge pushback by fans. I remember still at this time, I think in the back of each comic, we had the letters to the editor, and which I always enjoyed. I always read those. I don't know why they took those away.
Sure.
But they fan after fan after fan was completely distraught about this whole Azrael business. They took on the name Asbats. People started calling him. So Jean-Paul is to this day was a strange choice. Like you're saying, like he wasn't stable. Whether you think he conquered his demons or not, it was well known that he wasn't stable. And clearly, as we've stated, Nightwing was the obvious choice. But I think you're tipping your hat to the idea of permanence. I think that might be the right idea, because they're always going to bring Bruce Wayne as the Batman back.
Right. And they had to sell Nightwing comics as well.
Right.
I think this would have been a good opportunity, though, for them to make Nightwing also a mantle to be passed. Like, and I've always thought that Nightwing should be a mantle passed. And I always felt that Nightwing should have his own students. He should have his own sidekick.
Right.
Why not?
As someone mentions in the comments, Batman had actually left altogether Gotham. So he doesn't realize what Jean-Paul is doing. In fact, Wayne Manor goes to decay. Jean-Paul cuts off the entrance to the Batcave, so that he is completely isolated, even from Robin or Nightwing. But Bruce was traveling to look for Tim's dad, and the doctor who was kidnapped. So Batman was still being the detective that he was, continuing his detective work, but he of course wasn't doing it in any physical capacity.
I could have accepted if Nightwing said, "Batman, Bruce, you've done so much for me. You set me on this journey and everything, but I really feel like I've moved on. I feel like I've moved on. Nightwing is his own thing, is my own thing, and I feel like that I am living up to your vision, but as Nightwing, and I don't want to take on the Batman title." I think then I would have accepted the Nightwing not becoming Batman. But Nightwing clearly wanted to be Batman. He clearly wanted to be Batman, and you know, Bruce is, all we can say is that Bruce was messed up psychologically himself. That's the only thing you can say that maybe that explains why he didn't do it. But I think ultimately what it was that the writers planned this out. They decided they were going to take Batman out for a little while, and they needed a reason to bring him back. So he's going to just pick the first crazy guy and put him in there and let him be Batman for a little while. I think what he should have done is just left the position open. If he were going to do that, just leave the position open, and Nightwing will take a visit from time to time. You've got Batgirl, you've got all these Bat family people there. I'm sure they could have held down the fort, and Superman's just a phone call away. Honestly, if you need them, I think But I will say one thing I do like about what Azrael did, which is something I've always thought Bruce Wayne should have done, which he hasn't for some strange reason, is paired his job as Batman with technology. If I were Batman, I would have gone over to see Steel, and I would have downloaded his blueprints for his outfit and made it into a Bat version of what of that. I would have made him into Iron Batman, and I would sneak onto Paradise Islands, grab that little healing ray. All the weapons and armor and stuff that Justice League is collecting over the years, alien technology. Our Batman would be up there, breaking that stuff down, reverse engineering it, and putting it in my Batmobile and my bat suit, everything. And so for him to create a new bat suit makes sense. He was hideous, but I do feel like Batman doesn't make sense. It's almost like you almost need two Batmans. You need the Batman, the grim, gritty detective Batman who's on the streets and he's dealing with street level thugs. So you got Street Batman, and you need Justice League Batman. And Justice League Batman is the one who needs a suit that that protects him when they're fighting the bad guys. And I think almost like personality-wise, I think that Dick Grayson would have made a great Justice League Batman, and Bruce Wayne would have been better off as Street Batman. I just think because of their personalities.
Right. Yeah. In fact, even to this day in the Justice League, there's always these little quips of Batman about how he is just a human in a bat suit. While all these people have these great superpowers or enchantments or whatever they have, here's this man.
Have you ever seen Robot Chicken? Robot Chicken, I saw they had a Robot Chicken about Bruce Wayne not having any superpowers.
No.
They're always pulling jokes. Him and he and Aquaman, they're both always pulling. The Justice League are always making fun of Aquaman and Batman. Batman for not having any powers and Aquaman for having useless powers. So.
Right. And you have to put this all in the place of have to place it in its time frame. There was a big call in comics in the mid 90s for violence and aggression. I mean, you have like the Punisher and things kind of bubbling to the surface. Wolverine was a very aggressive character. It's kind of coming to the forefront, and so there was kind of a call, and I think this was DC's answer to kind of invoking and getting a much more violent Batman, which Batman was always very gritty, but Jean-Paul was different. Jean-Paul was killing. Jean-Paul was attacking. Jean-Paul was he was.
You know what John Paul is? I'll tell you what it is. John Paul is the Image Batman. If Image Comics had the chance to create Batman, he would be John Paul. And maybe that's what the problem was that Image was huge, and beforehand it was just Marvel and DC were duking it out, and now you had Image Comics that were now in the mix. And like I said, comics through some very strange and extreme costume decisions during the 90s. I think a lot of times because of Image became much more about the appearance and the costumes and all that. And everybody was Death something or other. They were Death, Blade, or Blood was somewhere in their name. I just want to say real quick, Hello to Sketchbook and Rick. They've been in here for a while now. Rick says now that the Justice League. Oh, he says where was he? He made a. Oh, he says at one point Nightwing led the Justice League. I'm not sure what point that was. I missed that section. I would have enjoyed that probably. Sketchbook says the '90s was every book and company trying to out edge each other. That's right. And that was one of the things that I ended up turning me off from comics for a long time. Mid to late '90s, I graduated from high school in '94, go off to college, and suddenly comics are at the bottom of my list. I wasn't, I'd stopped trying to break in as an artist, yada yada yada. But at any rate, I think that there were a lot of different things, and I think they thought that maybe they needed an edgier Batman, but they needed to kick him out and bring the old Batman. I don't know. I think they were insane. That's all. That's my only conclusion. I think ultimately they just went insane.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's with both of these huge events. I think the lack of permanence, like as you mentioned earlier, the fact that we're going to kill off Superman, and then within a year or so we're going to break the back of Bruce Wayne. That is Batman. I mean, these are huge life-altering events, and to have not that much fallout. I mean, there is within the scope of the comics, but within a few months, maybe a year or so, we're back on track. I know DC did suspend comics for a brief second. There was a little hiatus after the death of Superman, a moment of silence, if you will, and maybe that was apropos and fantastic, but like we talked about, the reign of Superman was right back in, and then Superman was resurrected.
I just want to say that I feel like part of I have to say my feelings towards the Death of Superman series versus Knightfall was much different. Okay. I wasn't as interested in Knightfall as I was in the Death of Superman, and part of it was because Batman only broke his back. Well, Paradise Island has this machine that will heal you. We know of all sorts of miracle cures in the DC universe. It's not like a broken back is such a difficult thing to overcome in comic books. And the fact he was making such a big deal about it, it was like, okay, talk to me when he's lost an arm or died or something. And, even that's not, Green Arrow did that. He did both of those things, and he came back. He turned out, it's just a flesh wound. My sketchbook says, I feel CG books are the same thing as the '90s, that they aren't being edgy. They're making off genre books like horror and mystery. That's why I don't back a lot of the books. So CG, I don't know, Brian, how familiar you are with, it's called Comicsgate. Have you heard of Comicsgate much, or do you know much about it?
Yeah, I know of them, and briefly. Like I said, I had a few cyber frogs back in the day, so
that's right. We can talk about that. Well, the thing is that most of these guys who are doing Comicsgate are guys from the '90s, the ones who created all the weird stuff from the '90s. Right. That's a lot of these guys, And one reason I didn't back a lot of them was because either I had just a lack of interest, or they never did digital versions. Too expensive. I had to pay more for the shipping than I do for the product. But I think it's nice they've sort of created an industry there. But yeah, I'm not interested in their stuff. It's stuff that turned me off in the '90s anyway. But anyway, going back to this, I just I don't know. I didn't have the same feelings about Knightfall. I didn't feel it was as serious a problem. I knew they're going to bring him back, just like they brought Superman back. I don't know if Superman was back at that point or not, but I think he was. I think he either was, or he was. We knew he was coming back. It was one of those two things. And
because I remember in the beginning of in Knightfall, there was the armbands that they had, Funeral for a Friend. There was a series, and I know just in the beginning of this, so it was right on the heels of Superman dying and of course coming back. We have this Knightfall, so they were pretty close in time frame.
Yeah, Yeah, they're right on the heels of each other. But I think so I would take the two of them. I would say I preferred the Death of Superman series because we got some interesting. We have four interesting characters out of it,
Mm.
two villains and two heroes. Superboy, I've always enjoyed him, and Steel. He was around for a while, and I think around 2000 or so, he disappeared for about 10 years or so in comics, and
Mm.
I think they've started bringing him back a little bit, but I don't know why he disappeared. I thought he was really cool. I liked his outfit. He had the
Yeah.
red cape, but the rest of it he was Iron Man, But
I
anyway,
like the
so
idea of a suit better than just stumbling upon some magical
meteorite
powers
or
or
something.
some potion or something to start. But I did want to hit some quick DC news because we're both discussing
Sure.
Superman and Batman.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Oh, yes. I almost forgot. Please.
Huge stuff going on in DC right now. So, and just to kind of wrap up what we're talking about, I was more invested in Batman at this time in my life.
Hmm.
I was collecting Batman Detective Comics, and so I was more invested, like I said, and it affected me more. But he wasn't dead. Batman was, so I always kind of knew, okay, they're gonna work him back in the into the main title. Whereas Superman, I mean, they did kill the man off, and so it had a different feel to it, and I honestly wasn't sure what to feel. I wasn't sure what to think.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, these new four characters, one grabbed each book, and I was like, wow, like this is fantastic. And I thought maybe this is just the way it was going to be. So I was very unsure with the Superman versus Batman. I was much more, you know, I think I knew what was going to happen because I'm like, there's no way Jean Paul that as Bats is going to stick around because it was just, I think the suit was fun for me. I didn't buy it all the way, but he clearly went dark, and it was, you knew Wayne was going to come back. So I guess
Sure.
that was the difference to me. But real quick with DC news.
Sure.
So Dan Dio, Didio, however you say his name, he left about 16 months ago. Daniel Cherry III took over. We've seen the SJWs, the wokeness of comics kind of come to the forefront.
Invade. Yeah.
They so there's a comic book, there's a website, ICV2, who does ratings for sales and money, and they kind of track this. They're one of the more official. So they put out December's numbers, and on the heels of that, Daniel Cherry leaves. I think it was November or December. He bounces and bails. On his way out, he decides to kill off the Justice League.
Right.
They're scheduled to end the Justice League. The final issue will come out, I believe, April of this year, and so he's exiting. And I just saw and they just picked and I don't know her name, and the Peas. Any which way, they picked a new person to head up who no one's really sure that she really knows
What she's doing.
I guess she's a marketing person, so she knows the marketing. But as far as editing,
Right.
there's a lot of buzz that there won't be any great changes or anything positive for what's going on. But so the numbers came out of the top 50 DC books for December. They were almost all Batman titles.
Yes.
Batman titles. Batman is carrying DC right now. Virtually nothing. I think Dark Knights of Steel, which I'm also reading. So far, it's been pretty good. But it's also Dark Knights of Steel. I mean, it kind of merges the two, Batman and Superman, and it's somewhat of a Batman title, if you will. So even in that, it's akin to a Batman title. So what I'm saying is DC sales are looking horrible. Their whole thing with Superman, Jonathan Kent taking over the role, son of Kal-El. His whole woke escapade has, I think book 5 sold. It was a blip on the screen and it quickly dropped off. So it was a novel idea. People, what's going on? And after that, there was a dive. And so DC's numbers are almost tanking. On the back side of this, it looks like, I don't know if Daniel Cherry did this or someone else, but there's this, they replaced, as I mentioned, they're going to bring a new Justice League, a woke Justice League with you know, non-binaries and transsexuals and all of whatever they're having. So we've got a new Green Lantern, new Flash, new Superman, new Aquaman, new Wonder Woman. And there's a lot of theories that because these are derivative characters, DC doesn't have to pay the royalties to the families, to the creators of the originals. So DC is looking to shed some of the iconic characters in hopes of possibly not paying the royalties. And
this is very funny.
Dropping their
DC's had like 80 years to pull this maneuver, where we take derivative characters and we make, and they've never done it. Why haven't they ever done it before? Because the whole thing is that's who they're making the money off, is the original characters, and that's who the fans want. And the only way that you can truly make money off the derivative characters is to kill the originals off once and for all, or for the most part. And DC hasn't been willing to do that, but now they're doing. This just shows how I think they're being stupid here. Like, I hate to say that, use the S word there, but I think they're being foolish. So, I hear you. It's crazy stuff.
So Marvel's doing fantastic. I read Trial of Magneto, thought it was decent. Inferno, wrapping up Jonathan Hickman's run on X-Men, was a strong giving.
Can I say something about Jonathan Kent? Jonathan Kent, the new Superman they brought in, it was an interesting idea. This was the Superman, the 90s Superman who fought Doomsday, right? And perished at his hand, pre-52 Superman. And Jonathan Kent was the son of that Superman, that Lois Lane. They came to the current universe. And he was buddies with Damian Wayne, and they were the Super Sons.
Right.
That Super Sons series, I love that. That was great. The few issues I got to check it out with it.
Yeah.
That was a great idea. And then they screwed it up. They just screwed the whole thing up. And it's unfortunate. Growing up, I always preferred DC over Marvel. I thought story-wise, I liked the idealism. And everything that I disliked about Marvel, DC's doing it in spades. They're like doubling down. They're more Marvel than Marvel. They're, it's just like, oh, you want something to complain about? Here's 3 books for you to complain about, whatever's bothering you. And Tom King did that series where he had the various DC characters would sit down in front of whatever, and it was like a therapy session or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, man. Heroes in Crisis. Yeah, I had that whole series.
It was
interesting.
I did like. I thought that the look.
I like the concept. I like the artwork. I like the concept, but I thought the actual execution just left me kind of, unmoved.
Right. Look, superheroes, it's a fantasy world. And ultimately, one of the reasons that I collect comics is that, I don't want it to be too much like reality. And the worst thing is that when comic writers, more often than not, try to make the fantasy world of comics more like real life, they screw it up. Right? Because they don't know what it's like to live in real life or something. I don't know why they keep messing it up. Maybe their writing ability isn't something that matches with it, with the subject matter. But the identity Heroes in Crisis or whatever it's called, I thought it was a dumb move on their part. It was we've run out of things to talk about for comics. Let's put with the heroes in therapy. And it's like, okay, you could do that, I guess. With DC and Batman being a Batman-led comic book company now, I don't know. I've listened to Ethan Van Sciver. He's the Cyberfrog guy. Yeah. He's got some good insights. I think maybe he'll be right, maybe he'll be wrong, but I found some of his insights to be pretty interesting. As he's talked about, about a year ago they started laying off all the DC people, or so a year or so, Dan DiDio and everybody, and I thought he had some pretty interesting insights into that. I don't know if how much of that's gonna pan out. I don't know what the we've actually hit our time at 10 o'clock. I should probably end it then.
Oh, man.
Okay, well, anyway, this was a great fun episode, and we'll talk more. And I actually had an idea for next week, although it escapes me at the moment. But that doesn't matter. We'll come up with something for next week. This is Overthinking Comics. I'm Hillel, and this is Brian, and we'll see you guys next week, next Thursday. Bye. Bye, Rick. Bye, Sketchbook.